Okay, we've been through both games. Now let's look at each aspect and see how things have changed, if at all. Resident Evil 1 tells the story of a highly trained special division of the local police department. God, that dye job. Stranded in a mansion, located in the neighbouring forest/mountainous region, wherein they discover all manner of nasties. As they search for a means of escape, they uncover not only the source of the creatures, but also of their torment, as it turns out that their plight was orchestrated by none other than the leader of their unit. This yarn is spun in one of the most famously inept ways. Through a terrible script and equally terrible voice acting/directing, it's a mess. An entertaining mess, but a mess nonetheless. In Resident Evil 7, Ethan Winters makes his way to Dulce, Louisiana, in search of his, for the last 3 years, missing wife Mia. Not long after his arrival, he finds Mia, but finds quickly take an unpleasant turn. Captured and held by the psychotic Baker family, Ethan must not only try to escape his captors, but also save his wife. Over the course of the story, we learn of a child bioorganic weapon, the health she's wrought, and her questionable ties to Mia. Here we have a more solid and at times intentionally campy script, performed more than adequately, but through some eye-rolling tropes
We'll be together forever.
and a massive and pivotal character, the story falls apart by the end. Both games share a similar structure for the story, as in a handful of justifying reasons for the story to work. The difference here is with RE7's focus on characters, and obviously the improved writing and acting. I more than stated my feelings on the content of the story, but it's how it impacts the game where the main problem lies. When you begin Resident Evil 1, you get a premise set and cutscene. A cutscene to point you in a direction. Then you're forced down a linear path to the first zombie and back. One more cutscene and the game begins proper. From the intro cutscene to the moment of the game beginning, you're looking at less than 10 minutes or so. Resident Evil 7, a premise set and cutscene and a lengthy linear section filled with story and not much else. Until you fight Mia for the first time, who is pretty much the first zombie equivalent. Then it's back to wandering. A boss fight and a series of cutscenes setting up the new location and our antagonists. After which the main body of the game begins. This can take approximately 35 to 40 minutes. This is fine for your first playthrough, but on subsequent ones, less so. This style would later rear its head in the boat section, once again dramatically slowing down the pace of the game for story and set pieces. I just found it so off-putting, especially in comparison to the more hands-off nature of the first game. An eternal battle between the serious desperation of the gameplay and the unintended farce that takes place any time anyone opens their mouth. It's a beautiful, god-awful mess. A consistent, serious tone with the occasional light interjection to not only prevent things from getting too dire, but also functions as a means of self-awareness for the, frankly, utter nonsense on display. This tonal play spin eventually falls by the wayside to allow the plot to fully take over and wrap itself up. Tonally, both games are simultaneously the same and different. RE1 is, in gameplay, a serious, moody horror experience, punctuated by bursts of action, but then...
Ouch! Richard!
Yeah. RE7 is more or less the same, however, its humorous moments are typically intentional.
Fuck. That's special.
As I said when talking about RE7's tone, I feel like this was the best way to go. Even as an ardent fan of Resident Evil, I can't take it too serious. There's an ample supply of bollocks in the series, and to get self-serious about it would make for a miserable experience. Hello Resident Evil 6! However, once we reach the boat, this falls to the wayside, leading to a return of that self-serious tone of the beginning, which, given what we've experienced up to this point, feels a tad ill-fitting. The problem is that when you spend a decent portion of the game poking fun in certain aspects, it's going to be harder for me to suddenly take it seriously. This is regardless of the quality of the content. High quality can reduce the problem, but, well, you know how I feel about RE7's narrative. Ironically, RE1 is, in a way, more tonally consistent with its inconsistency. The story and gameplay have their set tone and never change, so when the story shows up, you laugh.
Look at the monsters!
Or at least stare in a perplexed manner. And the gameplay, you clench your buttocks. A tense, unnerving, and at times claustrophobic atmosphere, accomplished by the mixture of limited player capabilities, nice camera angles, creative load screens, and music. A grim feel at first, like it's left behind after the tutorial, well, for the most part. In this place is a familiar tension and claustrophobia, but mixed with a more oppressive atmosphere, formed by the first-person perspective, enemies that generally tower above the player, strong environmental art, and lighting. The atmosphere is mostly similar, however I feel that there's a little more going on in 7. Well, up to a point. RE1 has tension and occasional feelings of claustrophobia. This is accomplished through the game's presentation and systems. 7 shares these with a slightly stronger sense of claustrophobia, which I'd say is down to the first-person perspective. RE1's atmosphere falls down when the story rears its head, however this detracts only a little due to the sparse nature of the story. It's not long till it finds its feet again. Resident Evil 7's falls down when the curtain does. Frequent autosaves, unlimited saves in save rooms, ineffective enemies, and the condensed nature of the maps all come together and form a mental safety net, which undermines the atmosphere. Once that realization sinks in, the game struggles to regain what was lost. I have played through both of these games once before, but even with that knowledge, Resident Evil 1 was still able to create an unmistakable sense of tension. When I played 7, once this happened, and I started noticing the autosaves and so on, I kinda felt nothing. A slow, if not methodically paced light adventure game with combat and resource management, centered in an almost labyrinthine mansion littered with infected and mutated nasties. Players make their way through the mansion by solving puzzles, finding keys, and dealing with the estate's residents, albeit thoughtfully. A slow, if not methodically paced light adventure game with combat and resource management, centered in a sectioned-off estate on a bayou, littered with infected and mutated nasties. Players make their way around the estate by solving puzzles, finding keys, and dealing with the estate's residents. This is going to be a long one, so once again we're dealing with the familiar, but the difference here is one of skill. As I mentioned when I was talking about RE7's exploration, I personally believe the zone approach came from a desire of location variance and reduced backtracking. The end result is a world that has the elements of the original Resident Evil, but is far too cramped to make the most of them. Again, this approach reduces backtracking, but here's the thing, backtracking isn't inherently a bad thing. There's a big difference in backtracking with purpose and backtracking for filler. In Resident Evil 1 you run through the mansion halls repeatedly, learning the mansion's layout, unlocking new sections with new things to uncover, discovering shortcuts that make you go, wait, we're back here. It's through the use of keys that most of the mansion cartography is gained, with moments such as needing the serum testing your knowledge. The puzzles and their pieces are spread out and gives them room to breathe. Resident Evil 7 doesn't have this. Whilst the Baker's house is the closest to emulating the Spencer mansion, it doesn't have that many rooms or halls. There are no real architectural surprises. Then there's the cramped nature of it all. The main hall has 3 points of interest: the Cerberus door, the Shadow Puzzle, and the Shotgun Trap. The solutions to the Shadow Puzzle and Shotgun Trap and one Cerberus head are all found upstairs in the West Wing. The latter 2 are practically in the same room. There's another head back at the start, but it's stuck in the clock. Oh, where could the solution be? It's in the main hall. The way that all these items are laid out and the ease of acquiring them makes this feel like a tutorial. That comes after the tutorial. There's an analog to the Cerberus door in Resident Evil 1. It's a locked door that leads to the guardhouse. That requires 4 crests. Let's have a look at the most arduous crest and Cerberus head. For Resident Evil 1, let's look for the Moon Crest. The Moon Crest is found in the attic. You have to avoid or deal with Yawn. To open the attic, you need the shield key. The shield key is found in the dining room. You need the gold emblem to get the shield key. The gold emblem is found in the bar. To get the gold emblem, you need the regular emblem. The regular emblem is found in the dining room. To get access to the gold emblem, you need the sheet music to open the secret passage. The sheet music is behind a cabinet. To get into the bar, you need the sword key. The sword key is found in the medical room. The door to get access to the attic requires the armor key. The armor key is in the plant room. To reach the key, you need the bag of chemicals. The chemicals are found in the West Wing save room. For Resident Evil 7, let's look at the Cerberus head found in the dissection room. You have to fight Jack. This is in the dissection room. You open the dissection room with the dissection room key, which is found in the morgue. You need to solve a puzzle to get the dissection room key. You find these rooms in the basement. You get access to the basement by opening a secret door. You need a statue to open the secret door. You find the statue in the bathroom of the 2nd floor West Wing. Not only are there more steps for the crest, there are steps to the steps, which leads to you bouncing around the mansion. For the Cerberus head, it's practically a straight line. Given the size of the Baker's house, it would be hard for RE7 to emulate the bouncy nature of RE1, but the game never will. The old house is smaller again, and Lucas' section is essentially a straight line. It wouldn't be until the boat where the scale would increase, but then it's really just back to the Baker's house. After that, we're back to the straight line for the remainder of the game. To compare to Resident Evil 1, our novel, 7's areas are basically 2 guardhouses, the cave, and an increased amount of the connective tissue areas. None of these areas truly make the classic structure shine, you just get hints of what once was. Enemies is one area that RE7 is, in theory, better than RE1 in. Why? Skill set. In Resident Evil 1 we have zombies. They stagger towards you and grab. Or lay there and grab. Dogs. They run towards you and attack. Hunters. They run towards you and attack, but can utilize dirty cross-ups. And the Chimera. They run towards you and attack, or they can cling to the ceiling and attack. So Resident Evil 7, standard molded. They can lunge, slash, and grab. The standard molded actually does have more attacks, but I didn't really get to see them, nor get footage of them. Why? Because they are weirdly reluctant to do anything. It's like they give them all these tools, and the AI is confused as to what to do, resulting mainly in the most plain slashes and so on. If they have no arms, they do a jump and a headbutt. If they are missing a leg and they're on the ground, they have a little weird hop thingy, but I never got to see them. The bladed molded. Similar, but they deal more damage and have more health. The fat molded. They waddle about and vomit everywhere, meaning you have to take cover, and in death, he blows up. Quick molded. They run towards you and attack, but can also hop around. In RE1, dogs, hunters and the Chimera all use the same basic strategy, with only slight deviations. In RE7, only the standard and bladed are similar, and they have more tools to work with than all of RE1's roster. Then you have a projectile enemy and an agile one. You could argue that 7 only really has 3 enemy types, but they are still 3 unique types, and I can't say that about RE1. Of course, RE1 thrashes 7 from a presentation standpoint. You have human, dog, green monster and humanoid insect monster. All have a distinct look and if silhouetted, are immediately discernible. In 7, let me put it this way, if you were fighting silhouettes, not much would be lost. Now combat. I'm tying this to enemies because the player's capabilities should inform the opposition they face. In RE1 your opposition is pretty much always effective. You start off as zombies, they are well suited to the beginning of the game. You're in the process of figuring out where you are and what you do, so you take your time. Your inability to move and shoot also aids zombies. Yeah, they're slow, and if there's only one present then who cares, but if you're in a tight space with a group, the lack of moving and aiming can easily place you in a perilous position. The dogs are very straightforward, irritating and used sparingly. They're good for keeping the player on their toes. In a one-on-one encounter they're simple to deal with, especially since you don't have to aim down. In groups, you should probably like it. Better than this though. Once knowledge, confidence and equipment is gained, you are more than capable of dealing with zombies and dogs. So here come the hunters to level the playing field, so encounters are still engaging, but also more dangerous given the speed and strength of hunters. When you reach the lab, zombies return. This section works as a moment of catharsis, a victory lap, though you can still do something stupid. In 7, the molded start off as intimidating, but you'll realise that they're quite useless. Why? Well, first of all, headshots stagger them. This isn't a bad thing, a reward for good aiming should be there. The problem is that headshots are trivial. Secondly, they don't have a lot of health. You encounter the bladed molded as well, the main difference being their increased health, but they suffer from the same problem, so they too end up as a big droopy nothing. The fat molded can be effective. It's a non-reactive bullet sponge that vomits in a wide area, which complements your movement capabilities, but it's failed by encounter design, as when there's a fat molded, there's a roundabout for you to take cover behind. For this kind of setup to work, you would need other molded types to harass the player, but that doesn't happen, so it's just shoot, crouch, stand, shoot, and so on. From my experience, the quick molded are the only effective enemy type. You're fast, they're fast, you can deal good damage to them and they can respond in kind. In small spaces, it can make for a hectic encounter. Both the fat and quick molded are rarely used, so you mainly deal with enemies that are, relatively speaking, less effective than zombies. The combat remains on this note for the remainder of the game, the status quo ever shifting in your favour. As with the lab in RE1, the mine is your grab your gear and go to the town section. But this isn't a now the tables have turned moment. The table didn't have to turn, we were just sitting slightly off centre. The molded have the potential to be effective, but not when you're operating on a completely different level of capability. Blocking, moving and shooting, headshots for days. How can they compete with that? I never really mentioned the resource management and so on of either game, outside of their presence anyway. This is because I cannot judge this particularly well anymore. I've been playing games of this genre for a few years shy of 20 years. And as such, when a game acts all coy and there you go, this is my goddamn raison d'etre. I end these games with herb stuffed pockets and ammo out the arse. What I can say is this, RE7 is undoubtedly easier, at least due to one aspect, the inventory size. As Crest in RE1 you only have 6 slots. If you're gearing up, that's 2 weapons, ammo for those weapons, and 2 healing items. Here's my endgame inventory from both games. Look at it. Even before the final inventory upgrade, item management was never really a problem in 7, due to there never really being a whole lot to carry at once. When you reach the old house, you may start running out of space after picking up a few bits and bobs. But with more stuff means more space is on the way, as right around the corner, here's an upgrade. Ooh, that was a close one. I almost had to consider what to bring with me there. Boy, I'm going to sound like a broken record in this one, but I would also tie some of this to the small maps, because the maps are not only small, but self-contained. There are only so many points of interest you can include, and fewer points of interest means fewer key items. Small self-contained maps means you probably already know where to use them. In one, you can have multiple key items at once, some with immediate use, some that will sit for a while. In the Sprawling Mansion, these items could be used anywhere at any time, and with the small inventory you have to choose, play it risky when it comes to self-defense, or to be prepared to backtrack. With an ever-expanding inventory and ever-shrinking maps, you can pretty much pack what you want without a care. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Well, by design in this instance. Whilst there have been what may initially feel like dramatic series-altering changes through the first-person perspective, the tone and defenseless gameplay of the beginning, you'll soon find that the spirit of classic Resident Evil is most certainly present in RE7. Undoubtedly, Resident Evil 7 is the most Resident Evil that the series has been since Zero. It has the focus on tension punctuated by action, the light adventure game elements, map exploration, and so on. It's obvious that the developers knew what pieces to take, but either didn't quite know how or why they worked, or they were overly cautious in their implementation. I'll be honest, when I started this I thought I was going to be a lot more complimentary to RE7. When I first finished it when it came out, I had no immediate interest in replaying it. What I played wasn't bad, in fact I actually quite enjoyed it. This was indeed an older styled Resident Evil. I've been looking for that for some time. Now, 2 years later, after a second playthrough, I think I finally know why. When I first played 7, I saw no real wrong. Outside of the boat anyway. Yes, even then I thought the areas were a bit small, but it was fine. I'm playing a more classically styled Resident Evil. I find things to put in things. I avoid enemies. I manage an inventory and oh look, an item box. It's lovely. But after playing through 1 again, and examining 7 a little closer than the first playthrough, it's a bit disappointing. In spite of the constant negativity I spouted, I do think Resident Evil 7 is quite good, and managed to capture the classic style decently. Also, I should say that Resident Evil 1 holds up surprisingly well. Whilst I still personally prefer the remake, which in my opinion is the classic style perfected, I've gained a new appreciation for the original. They just got so much right on that first attempt, and it still has a very unique feel that no other entry, barring the remake, has yet replicated.
Oh, that was great. Ouch!
Richard,